G'day guys, it's been 30 years since one of the greatest films of the modern era stomped onto our screens, enthralling, surprising, and frightening children of all ages. To this day, Jurassic Park remains one of, if not the best dinosaur film ever created.
Really spectacular, spared no expense.
A film that was not only wildly entertaining and hugely successful, but also paved the way for future use of CGI effects that have become commonplace in films today. So, to mark the 30th anniversary of this damn near perfect film, I thought we'd take a look at what made Jurassic Park so out bloody standing. This will be a nice change of pace from my usual ranting about the current state of entertainment in Hollywood.
Hold on to your butts.
It would be remiss of me to talk about Jurassic Park without first mentioning the author and co-screenwriter that made the film possible, Michael Crichton. May he rest in peace. Crichton was a man of vast intellect, having attended Harvard as both an English major and a med student before becoming a writer in earnest. Although he is best known for his novels, he did actually have a crack at Hollywood in earnest as well, directing The Great Train Robbery, starring the late great Sean Connery. The combination of his scientific knowledge, passion for writing and childhood reverence for dinosaurs led him to write a number of brilliant novels, including Jurassic Park. The book quickly became the bestseller upon its release in 1990, and as fate would have it,
Michael Crichton and I were actually working on another project together, a screenplay, and I asked him, "So what are you doing in the world of books?" He said, "Oh, I'm writing this thing about dinosaurs and DNA," and my eyes got wide, and suddenly I wanted to hear more, and I coaxed it out of him until he told me basically the whole story. So that's how the whole thing began.
This chance meeting would lead Spielberg to pursue the film rights to Jurassic Park. And as a fan of dinosaurs himself, Spielberg would immediately begin storyboarding potential scenes for his upcoming film.
And even before I had a screenplay, I began to storyboard the novel. I'd never done that before. I broke the novel down into scenes that I thought I might want to carry over into the motion picture version.
Also, Crichton retroactively and posthumously wins Giga Chat of the Year award for his take on professional critics in this interview from 1993.
What's your temperature on critics and what they do for a living and what they have to say about things and where they come from? Most cases, I guess that's.
Well, I'm not real enthusiastic about critics. I mean, I've sometimes been treated well and sometimes not, and I'm real interested, because there's been a lot of press discussion about this picture. I hear on the one hand, aren't you upset that Steven took all the explicit violence out of the movie? And then in the next breath, they'll say, don't you think the picture is too violent? And at some point, I think, wait a minute, what are we doing? Are we just trying to manufacture controversy?
While the original novel embraced some of the more horrific aspects of interactions between man and
genetically engineered theme park monsters,
Spielberg would take a different approach to the film.
My dad would always take me to see the dinosaurs in Philadelphia at the Franklin Institute of Technology. There was a natural history museum there with big dinosaur bones. And so I made that movie really as a youngster, remembering how much fun it was to imagine with such yearning that someday, wouldn't it be great to run into a dinosaur? And I just remember making the movie with that philosophy. I want to make a movie for all those dinosaur lovers. Jurassic Park wasn't a monster movie. It was a movie about animals long ago gone extinct that through the miracle of science and technology are brought into the 20th century. I realized that we weren't dealing with monsters, and this was not going to be a genre of horror, science fiction, fantasy, but instead, this was a really credible look at how dinosaurs might someday be brought back right alongside modern mankind. And that really fascinated me, and that immediately set my own template for not making this a monster movie.
Steven specifically made a point that Jurassic was to be as real looking as possible in order to get the audience to believe everything we were going to take them through.
This approach of focused realism and making dinosaurs as believable as possible would set the benchmark for the rest of the production. It would push the best Hollywood special effects artists of the day to create something the likes of which audiences had never seen before, leaving some old technologies in the past as they pioneered new technologies to tell their story, ultimately altering the future of filmmaking forever.
I don't think you're giving us our due credit. Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Every piece of this puzzle, from sound to cutting-edge animatronics, groundbreaking CGI, acting and music, would need to work in unison to sell this fantastic world of science fiction as
Something that was real. Something that they could see and touch.
And fortunately for us all, the crew Steven Spielberg led on this endeavour were very much up to the task. But none of this would happen by accident, as the filmmakers would have to
crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously,
to make this a reality. And isn't that a story you want to hear? So join me as we explore what makes Jurassic Park one of the greatest and best films of the modern era. Steven Spielberg was a man of singular vision when it came to bringing Jurassic Park to the silver screen, not unlike John Hammond, as a matter of fact.
Creation is an act of sheer will.
The evolution from book to film would include a number of key changes, such as omissions of iconic scenes that would later be included in the various Jurassic sequels. Amendments would be made to core characters, and for the better in most instances.
I was glad looking back on it after reading Michael Crichton's book and then seeing how my part was changed for Jurassic. Instead of being the younger sister and then the older brother, it was the older sister and the younger brother. And I got to have the expertise in the computers. And I think that inspired a lot of young girls as well to see, okay, I can actually do something that has to do with computers or mathematics, technology, and be really effective.
Although I'm pretty sure the rocket launcher wielding Robert Muldoon from the books would have survived this situation.
Run towards the shed. I've got her.
Yeah! And the film would have a vastly different ending from the book, an ending that actually changed during production, but we'll touch on that a bit later. It was Spielberg's dream, as a lover of dinosaurs from his youth, and whom had grown up watching the classics like King Kong, to recapture the same magic in his film. Already a proven filmmaker by this stage of his career, Spielberg attracted some of the best backstage talent in Hollywood to the project.
Well, I was planning to make the movie, as much as possible with full-size animatronic dinosaurs. And the only person on the face of the planet that could pull that off was Stan Winston.
Remember a conversation simply on the line of, would we be interested? And it was like, be interested, my goodness.
And Phil Tippett was hired by me to do that because he was the best in the business.
But selling dinosaurs as real would take more than just the creative might of Industrial Light and Magic, Stan Winston Studios, and Tippett Studios. And to his credit, Spielberg knew the task ahead would not be achieved through special effects and star power, but rather by masters of the craft.
I think an audience will buy into, the most far-fetched fantasies if it's done seriously and with a lot of credibility. So I didn't cast movie icon stars to play the different characters. I try to cast really, really good actors.
The reactions of the cast, from the late great Richard Attenborough through Sam Neill, Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum, and a young and upcoming Sam Jackson, would be critical to selling both the practical and soon-to-be digital dinosaurs of the film. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Spielberg, even with his level-headed casting and the best technical talent committed to bringing his vision to life, knew the current special effects techniques of the day were still not up to the task of bringing a photoreal dinosaur to the big screen.
But how we were going to get the dinosaurs to run, how we were going to get them to even be in the movie in wide shots was always going to be the old-fashioned way through stop-motion animation. But it wasn't 100%. It was still jerky. And Phil did a whole bunch of wonderful blur motions on a T-Rex running, on a raptor running. I come home with my kids and look at this stuff over and over and over again. And my kids bought it. They said, wow, Dad, a real dinosaur. But I still saw the jerks.
Stan Winston's life-size dinosaurs accepted, of course. For context, prior to Jurassic Park, photorealistic CGI animals had never been produced on film before. While ILM had achieved wonders in the relatively short space of time between their inception working on Star Wars: A New Hope, through to their latest project being Terminator 2 prior to Jurassic Park, until this point, bringing living creatures to the big screen, other than tagging and bagging live animals, was still achieved through puppetry and through a technique called go motion.
We all started to plan it out as the conventional stop motion, go motion, rod puppet, high speed with a little bit of computer graphics.
Perfected from stop motion by Tippett Studios during their work on films like Empire Strikes Back and RoboCop, Go Motion was all about adding a blur to the frame-by-frame animation technique to invoke a sense of realism. The technique had already proven successful with audiences, at least in terms of science fiction, but would it be able to sell dinosaurs coming back from extinction? Spielberg's high standards already had him questioning whether this was the right technique for the job.
Movement was very accurate and very rhythmical, but there was still something a bit go motion-y about it.
But, as luck would have it, Dennis Muren, one of the effects leads from ILM who'd been hired for the project, having recently come off working on Terminator 2, had seen the evolution of computer graphic technology since his work on Star Wars. Sensing an opportunity and seeing Spielberg's lack of enthusiasm for the use of Go Motion, he requested the opportunity to produce a photorealistic dinosaur in CGI.
And my first reaction was, well, prove it.
Spielberg's initial hesitation was understandable. That's not to say that computer technology wasn't already being used to create special effects on film, as films like Labyrinth, Tron, and Willow had all dipped their quills in this particular ink. But as the audience, you could normally tell.
I can tell instantly it's a gift.
And to his credit, Dennis Muren and his team at ILM could walk the walk.
Oh, shit.
Following a series of digital tests which grew rapidly in complexity, Spielberg decided that this new technique was not only the future for his film, but likely for the future of all films. This breakthrough cannot be overstated. What would start as a proof of concept would rapidly evolve into some of the most timeless CGI moments ever committed to film.
It's like suddenly, here we are, we're extinct, we're the dinosaurs. And of course, that irony wasn't lost on any of us.
We're out of a job.
Don't you mean extinct?
Fortunately for Tippett and his team, their expertise in the art of model animation would not be wasted, as they would work closely with ILM to assist in the animated movements of the digital creatures, as they were still the leading experts in the art of bringing this to film.
Those people are the real miracle workers of Jurassic Park.
To add additional realism to the work of ILM, now working directly alongside the Tippett team, Spielberg recruited one of the foremost experts on dinosaurs of the day, Jack Horner, as a subject matter expert. On top of this, ILM's animators would undertake a series of physical workshops as well as study trips to better understand the movements of natural creatures. Combine this with the work of Michael Antieri, who would closely supervise how the special effects would come together on film, alongside Stan Winston's animatronics that to this day remain the undefeated champions of film, including the T-101, Alien Queen, and Predator, just to name a few, and you had the makings of something truly special. But the birth of CGI and the best practical effects money could buy were just two pieces of the puzzle. One of the many reasons Jurassic Park, 30 years later, continues to impress those who weren't fortunate enough to see it at the time of release is because Spielberg is a man of great directorial vision, and arguably one of the best visual storytellers of our time. But Spielberg as a director was also a risk taker. As early as Jaws, Spielberg was ignoring the cautious words of filmmakers who had come before him, in an endeavour to push the boundaries and create the best possible viewing experience for his audience. And the iconic T-Rex paddock attack scene is a testament to that fact. For this scene to become the legendary piece of pop culture that it has become, a number of risks were taken, including shooting the animatronic, which, let's be honest, is a fancy word for robot, in the rain.
Personally, I didn't know you couldn't pour water on the dinosaurs, so I suddenly decided to do the entire main road attack in rain. And Stan did his funny clearing of his throat. I didn't exactly design these things for water. And I said, well, Stan, what happens if we get them wet? He said, nobody knows. And I don't want to find out. And I said, well, Stan, this sequence will be so much better in the rain because we won't see the T-Rex that well. We'll be in the car. There'll be water running down the windows. The T-Rex will look into the window. You'll sort of see him, but you'll also see a lot of rain coming down. We need to do this whole sequence in the rain. And so Stan said, well, look, hey, I'm a gambler. Let's try.
I love this. Stan's like, sure thing, boss, but internally he's like, oh my bloody God.
We talked about and knew about this particular sequence and how difficult this sequence was going to be. Why is it going to be so difficult? It was in the middle of rain. It was a heavy, rainy set. We talked strongly with Stephen, letting him know that we're dealing with something that was electronic, robotic, something things could go wrong with. We had to keep the rain off of the T-Rex.
More than that, while ILM had barely scratched the surface of their potential in their early shots with the Brachiosaurus, they still weren't sure how far they could push the new technology before it started to fall apart and look fake.
We didn't know how close, literally, we could get on one of these computer-graphic dinosaurs, how big in the frame they could be before they would start falling apart and looking like a computer-generated trick of some sort.
I hate computers.
This scene between the animatronic failing due to rain and ILM's unproven CGI techniques could have been an absolute disaster. Instead, it looms large enough to cast a shadow over today's films, where CGI has become commonplace. I don't know if I'm emphasizing the point enough. Look at this scene! It is a perfect blend of practical and digital cinema, helped by the brilliant cinematography of Spielberg and Dean Cundey. Sure, there's a few moments that people with a keen eye like to draw attention to, but what do you expect when this was the first time anything like this had been done on such a scale? Don't ever forget that Jurassic Park's crew were building the plane while it was in flight, harnessing new technology to blur the lines of fiction and reality, and somehow shooting scenes like this with CGI and practical special effects like they'd been doing it for 20 years.
I kept saying, I want to move the camera. Don't tell me that every time a CGI dinosaur comes plodding through the scene, I got to lock down my camera. I want to dolly and pan and be normal. I even want to handhold. That was the ultimate challenge. Can you handhold and still put the element into the scene? And Dennis was able to do that.
And as for the car and cliff bit, when you were watching it for the first time, did you really question where the cliff came from? Or were you so immersed in the scene and afraid for Alan and the kids that you didn't really question it? That's the power of good cinematography, and it's something lost on many modern films. Good cinematography isn't about how pretty an image looks. Good cinematography is about the story within a shot and how it makes the audience feel. Jurassic Park oozes good cinematography from the first scene, taking the audience immediately into the film and not letting them go for the next 2 hours. From the way a dinosaur is revealed for the first time, to the first time we see one up close, to how tiny and trapped we feel when the T-Rex breaks free from her paddock. None of this is accidental. It was very deliberate. You know why the raptors were so horrifying? Because of scenes like this. There's something really unsettling about seeing something so dangerous, foreign and alien in a world that's so familiar. Seriously, 30 seconds ago, these naive children were safe eating ice cream with spoons, and then in the next scene, a spoon could get them torn to pieces. This is bloody nightmare fuel. It's fantastic visual storytelling, and a lot of this is in no small part due to the attention to detail from every single person working on this film. Whether it was digital inputs of rain around dinosaurs' feet, or the 8 to 12 people operating the animatronic T-Rex to make it look, breathe, and feel real, to the countless hours of research that went into making these creatures look the part. It also helps when you have the best modern film composer working on your soundtrack.
What I recall about the introduction of the music associated with the animals is the first time the humans see them, the woman and the man, I think, and we have a long shot of this creature, which is actually very beautiful.
Good on you, John Williams, you bloody legend. And of course, ILM got better and more confident with each shot they produced, which leads us to...
Originally, the raptor was going to have his kind of final say-so in the movie.
And the raptors go up and they shake all these bones, and for some reason all the bones fall down, and a rib goes through one of the raptors, and the raptors in the teeth of the Tyrannosaurus skeleton. It falls to the ground and it crushes them.
As mentioned earlier, after shooting 2 scenes with the T-Rex, Spielberg became hyper-aware who the star of the film was going to be.
T-Rex, T-Rex, T-Rex!
And given his form from when he made Jaws...
The most interesting conflict, as far as I'm concerned, happened between me and Stephen when it came to the discussion of the ending. Because he said to me, the ending of the book is a downer. The shark gets stabbed with a harpoon, can't hold up the barrels, and eventually drowns, spins slowly to the bottom, and then the story ends, if you will. The characters are saved. That is not a big, rousing ending, and I need a big, rousing ending. So he said, here is what I propose to do. And he told me the ending that he had in mind. And I said, Stephen, that is completely unbelievable. It can't happen. A shark does not bite down on a scuba tank and explode like an oil refinery. He said, I don't care. He said, if I have got them for 2 hours, they will believe whatever I do for the next 3 minutes because I've got them in my hands and I want the audience on their feet screaming at the end, yes, 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 this is what should happen to this animal.
It should be no surprise to anyone that he changed the ending of his film midway through production.
The audience will hate me if the T-Rex doesn't come back and make one more heroic appearance.
But once again, the crew were able to rise to the occasion, producing one of the most cinematic final encounters in film history.
Had it all worked out, how like the Tyrannosaurus would come in like the cavalry and save the day.
I wanted the movie to end with the T-Rex having killed the last raptor, doing that heroic King Kong-esque roar. And I thought it would be great to let the banner, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, fall, because it was an irony.
And on that note, the sound design team's work receives the greatest compliment of all. No one noticed it was fake. Therefore, nobody mentioned it. I don't want to undersell what that actually means. The work Gary Rydstrom did, creating an entire catalogue of sounds for creatures that had been extinct for 65 million years, from scratch, might I add, because there was no luxury of having an entire catalogue of this stuff digitally stored away like filmmakers have today. From footsteps to iconic roars is nothing short of Oscar-worthy. Oh, would you look at that? The culmination of all these brilliantly talented people, from the cast and crew through to the post-production team, netted Jurassic Park 3 Oscars, including Best Special Effects and the highest box office of the day.
We're gonna make a fortune.
Well, unless you count for inflation, in which case it's still gone with the wind.
I will not get drawn into another financial debate. I really will not.
But its legacy is so much more than the sum of awards and dollars. Jurassic Park changed filmmaking forever, pioneering CGI practices that are now the staple of modern blockbusters. And yet, from humble beginnings to the mega franchise it has become, Jurassic Park's shadow still looms as one of the biggest and best in modern cinema, and has comfortably earned its place on my must-watch list. I could talk all day about how brilliant and influential this film was/is, but getting to the point, happy 30th birthday Jurassic Park, you bloody legend, and may I continue to play you first whenever I buy a new television or need to test a new sound system. But remember, I'm just a brainless lump who's probably going to cop a copyright strike from Universal for this one.
I don't care for lawyers. Do you?
Hooroo.